Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming to your city council meeting. My name is Mayor Blackburn. I'm going to convene. And as is our custom, the first meeting of the month, I will convene and recess to begin the urban renewal meeting.
And we'll do pledge on the way out.
Sure.
Okay, all right, sounds good. Good evening. It's this is starting the October 10th Urban Renewal Agency meeting. And then Jen, do we have either Ben or okay. All right, so we have two people on this is start your clocks now because this could be a very short one. Before we let's see. Any other agenda items?
No, there are no changes to the URA agenda.
Okay, before we do,
Excuse me, if I can just, Mr. Chair, perhaps we should ask the urban renewal administrator.
well, he's the star of the show.
Okay.
Yes.
For that.
It is the Will Show for sure.
Okay.
It is true. Sorry, Will. And the before we get going, I did want to formally welcome Will to Urban Renewal Agency meeting, and we're really excited to have you. And hopefully everyone on the agency has had time to meet with you or is scheduled to meet with you. So awesome. And then you will have the main agenda item here in a second. Any business from the audience, either online? I don't see much in the in-person way. All right, I see a no from Jen online. Consent agenda, there's one set of minutes.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, we have a first from Megan and a second from Paul. All in favor, say yea verily.
Aye.
Aye.
And chair says yea verily. So that passes. Regular business items. Will, if you could give us your state of the agency, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Sam Miller and members of the Urban Renewal Agency Board. It's gonna be very short. Just wanted to give some opening remarks and say how happy I am to be here. Hood River has been really a model in the state for how to successfully use urban renewal. So looking forward to carrying that on and also bringing my extra capacity and bandwidth to what is going to be a massive undertaking on the West Side district. So with that sort of short introduction, some updates is that the West Side ordinance and plan were recorded with the county assessor on Tuesday, September 26th. So he'll be reviewing. We'll hear if there's any need for any adjustments or corrections or anything like that, but we're well ahead of schedule of getting it in before the new calendar year. And for the Heights, we have a draft preferred design and implementation plan that will be going to the Urban Renewal Advisory Committee on October 19th. And then we'll be coming to the Urban Renewal Agency Board on your next regular meeting, November 13th. So it'll be the preferred design concept, the implementation plan, and then that will be one more bite at the apple to make any input or changes. And then we'll bring back the final, full report with executive summary, appendices, all that will then come at a subsequent regular Urban Renewal Agency Board meeting. And then as Chair Zay Miller noted, I'm meeting with all the agency board members. I've met with about half so far and have most of the rest scheduled just to hear your thoughts on the Urban Renewal Agency's direction, and then also to get input on prioritization of all the projects that were assigned to this new position in the FY24 budget. So I plan to kind of accumulate and synthesize that input and put together a 6-month work plan and bring that back to you on November 13th as well, just so we all know what comes first and what I'm working on and make sure we all agree. So yeah, and again, very happy to be back. Thank you.
Cool. Any questions for Will? Tim or Doug?
Just to say, welcome back, Will.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome back.
Agree. Welcome back,
Awesome.
Will.
Thanks, Will. Okay, quick lightning round of items from agency members. Gladys.
None.
Paul?
No.
Right. Tim?
None.
Doug?
None.
Wow.
Actually, can I circle back?
Oh, man.
I know, sorry. So I had pie with the mayor this weekend, and there was a lot of discussion about items that were really urban renewal items. And so that was, I look forward to those continued discussions, but just for the general sort of lay of the land, urban renewal is very important to our residents. So I'm so glad you're with us.
Awesome. Awesome. Sweet. And with that, we will adjourn in 5 short minutes. Maybe that's our public opinion, public input.
Great. So now I'll reconvene the city council meeting. We're going to remember that the business we can conduct this evening is on the unceded lands of the local tribes who have been here for much longer than we have. Let's stand and say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right. Do we have any agenda additions or corrections, Abigail?
Yes, Mayor. First, I want to note that our city attorney is not here tonight because he is with the city of Banks on Tuesdays. And for that reason, we have rescheduled the executive session. It was originally scheduled for tonight. We'll do it on October 23rd.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That takes us to presentations. Business from the audience. I don't think we have any. Is there anyone online, Jen, who wishes to address the council? Thank you. In that case, we'll go to the consent agenda, but there's a little bit of a thing about the council minutes from September 11th. Abigail?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. On page 20 of your packet, in the minutes for September 25th, we have the wrong motion listed there. If you might remember in that conversation, the motion was to authorize the mayor to sign the plat. It was not a motion to annex. So our city recorder has already made the corrections, but I wanted you to note that so that your packet was wrong, and we will get that corrected. Thank you, Mayor.
Can we still approve the minutes with that correction?
I think if you do that as part of your motion, I think that would be great.
Great, thank you. In that case, I would, and let's see.
I have one other,
Okay, good. So
or
so
maybe
we've
can
made
we
it.
just
We've
pull minutes out. NOLCC,
Yeah, let's vote on the first, let's approve the minutes. So if someone would move to approve the minutes, please.
I have one
Something else
other
on the minutes.
super minor. I could even, is that Patty Fink was identified as being a Hood River resident. She used to, but now she's a White Salmon resident, and just correcting that one little thing. But so I will make a motion to approve the minutes from September 11th and September 25th with the edits that were defined herein.
I will second.
Second by Megan. Discussion on approving the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
I,
Opposed? Opposed? Chair votes aye. Minutes pass. Moving on to the OLCC permit application approvals.
Yeah, can we pull that from the consent agenda, please?
Yes, those will be pulled off. And moving on to the remainder of the consent agenda, which is the pavement management program. I would entertain a motion to approve consent agenda item number 3.
I move we approve consent agenda item number 3, pavement management program.
Moved by Megan,
Second.
second by Tim.
Yep.
Discussion on pavement management. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
I,
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion passes. Okay, OLCC permits. I guess the way we do this, I entertain a motion and then we each vote, right? So,
Doug's got his hand raised.
Doug, thank you. Doug is moving, I think moved by Stepina.
No,
no, I
Sorry.
have to recuse myself from voting on this because I'm involved with the applicant in terms of the Music Underground, so I cannot vote, so recusing myself.
Great, okay, thank you. Let the record show that Councilor Stepina is recusing himself.
May I
from this-
clarify that just a tiny bit?
Yes, please.
Which is
Yeah.
that my standing from Councilor Stupina is he does not have a financial interest in it, but he is connected to that establishment. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification. Yeah, I'm not an owner of, but I am a volunteer and help manage the facility, have an office here, so I think that's grounds enough to recuse myself for this.
Great, thank you, Doug. for your forthrightness. So I'm still waiting for a motion.
I will move we approve consent agenda item number 2, OLCC permit applications.
Moved by Megan,
Second.
second by Zan Miller. Okay, now this is tricky, y'all. So let's just go one at a time. Discussion on this item? We'll do a
No discussion, but I have a statement to make before we go ahead and
Great,
vote.
please do, Gladys.
Yes, I will be abstaining from OLCC permit application approvals. This is not a reflection of these businesses or their owners. Rather, I object the fact that we do not have enough transportation options for people who patronize these establishments. As a result, they may end up getting behind the wheel and putting themselves and others at risk. I know that staff has been researching ways to increase our transportation options, and I appreciate their work on this topic. If we and our community partners are able to provide adequate transportation during late evenings and weekends, I will be happy to start approving OLCC applications again.
Thank you, Gladys. So to be clear, we're looking for 4 yeses and there is a chance for 4 yeses. So Megan, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mark, how do you vote?
Yes.
Tim, how do you vote?
Aye.
That's 3 ayes. Doug has recused. Gladys, how do you vote?
I abstain.
She abstains. Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Good job, us. Thank you. Moving on to action items.
Hello, good evening. All right, so there's 2 action items here. The first is a municipal advisory contract with DA Davidson. Planning for future election for a bond to meet the city's large capital needs is identified as a significant project in the 2023-2024 council work plan. One of the identified activities for this year in the furtherance of that objective is the hiring of a consultant to analyze the city needs and recommendations for bond and financing options. In addition to the prioritization of the council work plan, the need for bond or alternative financing was also identified in the 2023-2024 budget. Capital projects underway will eventually outpace the city's ability to finance them with current resources. In the interest of addressing this financing in a deliberate manner, staff is recommending the engagement of a municipal advisory service. A municipal advisor is a financial professional who offers guidance to or on behalf of a municipal entity concerning municipal finance products or the issuance of municipal securities. I should also note that in Oregon, a municipal service advisor also acts as a fiduciary. And so it's an additional level sort of guidance within the city. Staff identified qualified municipal advisors and received 3 proposals. We are recommending the proposal in front of you with DA Davidson based on strong recommendations, experience, and cost effectiveness. We've worked with DA Davidson to develop a scope of work that includes a financial assessment, determining financial requirements and related services, and then eventually providing fiduciary services related to any prospective financing or bond issuance. What is it before you is the request to approve an initial scope of work identified as section 1A in the contract. This is a scope of work that provides recommendations regarding development of accountability and best practices to support future potential financial efforts, as well as other defined activities, which could include overall bonding capacity or potential for initiatives that may be outside of just the capital projects that are identified. So I'll call out a couple things in section 1A so you can understand the scope of this work. It's under general financial services on page 41 of your packet. So this general financial services scope includes an evaluation of the city of Hood River's financial conditions, any prior funding and financial deliberations and analysis, a review of the city's current operating and capital improvement project budgets, including revenue assumptions, a review and evaluation of the city's multi-year financial forecast and financial reporting, preparing a financial assessment of the client's financial position, including key financial metrics and best practices analysis, and also review funding and financing capacity within the city, financing options, including potential financial repayment revenues, fund balances, credit impacts, and financing alternatives. Additionally, part of this scope is providing recommendations of best practices related to debt issuances, including appropriate use of government debt, conditions under which debt is advisable, and generally acceptable levels of debt. And then lastly, we'll also be asking them to provide recommendations regarding general fund reserve and reserves in other funds, which can be adopted as part of the City of Hood River's formal financial management policy. So this is very, very much an educational stage, right? It is not looking at any sort of specific bond issuance. It's not looking to identify any specific projects at this stage that may be eligible for outside financing or bond financing. But it is very much sort of setting the stage for that conversation with council. So the work product that we would expect to receive from this, in addition to a general financial overview of the City of Hood River's sort of finances, capacity, what would be appropriate levels of debt and best practices for a city of our size, right? Would be also some operating best metrics that we can use and some recommendations as far as a formal debt policy that we can adopt. And so all of this would be a baseline for future discussions and other stages as we continue to explore the possibility for outside financing or bonding. We have a total budget, for this fiscal year of about $45,000 related to this project. This phase one is not to exceed 20,000. So there is the idea that this would be phase one of a multi-phase project within this year.
Thank you. Questions for staff?
Remind me again the timeline. I know we chatted earlier, but I forgot. When would this start? When would phase one be completed, to give us an understanding of what the next several phases would look like?
Yeah, I mean, so I would expect phase one is probably going to be 6 to 9 months or so. Probably hopefully 6 months. I think that as we look at a larger financing vehicle, there's based on our budget and based on the current project schedule, there is a need for some sort of outside financing this year. I expect that we'll be talking about some sort of bridge financing. The idea of a revenue bond or additional bonding is probably a 2025, I think earliest.
Megan?
Thanks, Chris. And this is where I always get confused, but like general obligation bonds and bonding for capital projects are different, correct?
Right, so there are the most traditional way to finance a number of the capital projects would be revenue bonds. Right, so these are bonds that are tied to the various usage revenues that are received from either water, sewer, right, roads.
Right.
To the extent that that either needs are in excess of that, or it becomes financially advisable to just use sort of general credit of the city, that would be a separate form of bonding. So I would expect that for the capital projects, we will look first and foremost to revenue bonds, being that's the most traditional. But again, depending on how council directs and what other projects they want to look at, we may be talking about sort of a general obligation type bond.
Okay.
But again, this is decisions that are made in the future as we define projects and what we do and what city council and staff deem appropriate.
So I guess I have a big picture question of like the bond strategy in the work plan is really focused on a potential like general obligation bond for housing or parks or some other, kind of policy related things. Not really about utility capital improvement plans. It sounds like, the scope of work when I was reading it, it's very general financial health for the city, certainly financial health for our utility funds and building out the massive amounts of projects we need to do in the next 20 years. That's all really important. I'm certainly on board for that, but I guess I'm a little unclear on what questions we're answering specific to kind of the policy questions we have that are not the same as funding capital
I guess
utilities.
From my perspective, there is an overall just sort of bond capacity and financing issue, right? So at the crux of it is there is a pipeline of capital improvement projects of some certain size, right? there is a financing capacity that the city is going to have with regards to its options. That is going to be some number that is either in excess or not at that sort of same number. So I think from a first perspective, it would be understanding just general, sort of bonding capacity as it relates to things that would not impact the types of projects that you're talking about. And so city council will be, sort of asked to make certain decisions with regards to sort of here's our capacity, right? Based on this analysis, here's best practices, here's some decisions that need to be made just with regards to the pipeline of projects and priorities from the sort of blocking and tackling of, sort of city infrastructure. The next part of it that would come out of here is just sort of general debt capacity and best practices. What are appropriate levels of debt, right? What is the, sort of based on the financial capacity of the city, its health standing, its financial health, what is appropriate debt levels for a city of this size? And then decisions can be made based on that as far as timing, right? Projects, where they should be directed, and sort of how we should proceed. So I think a lot of this is trying to develop a comprehensive strategy that includes sort of both the projects that are in the pipeline, as well as that, the aspirational goals that are in the council.
Okay, so this should give us some answer of like what, I guess, what amount would be available for kind of that policy general obligation bond if council wanted to look into that.
Yes.
Okay.
May I also add that I think there's a lot of overlap and crosswalk between those. I mean, when we look at affordable housing, one of the pieces is, what is the cost of infrastructure? It's not just land acquisition, but it's also trying to get utilities to a piece of land, or, making, infill more possible because of, the SDCs may be too high. And so there might be opportunities there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned, I think so along these lines, it's interconnected, but Will and I have talked about, trying to extend this to the urban renewal areas, particularly as the west side ramps up, given the size, given the scope there. There may be, again, sort of a bond that is associated with the urban renewal area. And as much as sort of these are separate silos, right? At the end of the day, it all does roll up to the city. And so ultimately, understanding the financial condition and best practices and debt management policies and whatnot is just in my opinion, it's a good platform to begin from.
To that point, when I was touring the mayors around this summer at the mayor's conference, specifically Mayor Kate and I did some urban renewal tours. And a question that came up multiple times was, did you guys borrow for your urban renewal activities? Which there are really different strategies for doing it. And let's make no mistake, my understanding of that is very limited. But this was very much of a topic among other mayors who had used some urban renewal, but were interested in our work enough that they came on the tour. So we're batting at a pretty high league on this stuff, I believe. Other questions? Tim, thank you.
Yeah, Chris, do you expect there to be a check-in at some point in time during the contract?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think what I've talked to DA Davidson about is being able to have either some financial models or some reports that come out of this initial phase. And so we would absolutely come back and report to the city council, sort of what came out of this at this phase of the study. No question. I also would expect, we've talked about updating the financial priorities, or just as far as the financial objectives that are part of the resolution and ordinances. And I also would expect that we probably implement some sort of debt management resolution, just again, with just general policies and sort of scope. So I would expect a number of things to come out of this phase that will be presented to the city council.
I guess a general question to you. I'm just going to display my ignorance on the topic, but $20,000 doesn't seem like a lot.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree. So I talked to, so Haley and I sat down with DA Davidson and went through this initial scope that we helped craft. And we asked the specific question, sort of, is this budget enough to get what we want to achieve? And we've been told that it's a sufficient budget. So it's a not to exceed contract, and we'll manage it, but I'm gonna sort of trust their expertise and hope we can get this in, all within the budget.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Kind of to that point, that there's a famous science fiction story where they invest a lot of time in asking someone to answer a question, and then at the end, they realize they asked the wrong question. So they got the answer, but like, yes, and it was 42.
Yeah.
So like, the point I'm trying to make is, gosh, if the questions we're asking only cost 20,000 to answer, are we asking the right questions, or
Yeah.
are we gonna be disappointed at the end?
Yeah, I share your concern, right? And I think the way that we tried to manage it was, we got, one of the proposals we received was a much larger scope of work that was much more detailed, however, with regards to what the end product was gonna be.
Yeah.
At a significantly higher budget.
Yeah.
Right, and so what we've tried to do here is really focus on, help us understand what we don't know, right? By showing us sort of how municipalities of our size, right, are sort of managing these issues. So it's really, really focused. It's trying to focus on, give us a snapshot of the financial health of the city as it is today, right? Give us a snapshot of best practices.
Yep.
And sort of help us with sort of the tools and guidance with regards to next steps. So it sounds like a lot, but I think we've sort of managed down to these sort of specific questions to sort of help us understand what we don't.
Thank you, Chris. Tim, I kind of jumped on your wagon. Did you get what you needed?
Perfect. Thanks, Mayor.
More.
Thanks, Chris. I'm happy that the foundational piece will be usable by the urban renewal areas. Both of them are in play, as well as general fund stuff. What do you think the shelf life of this information is? So this is giving us answers on, how do we approach, different bonding type things. Is that through 26 or 27 or 28? Or?
So the contract itself runs through 2025, although it's 30-day cancelable. Right?
Sure.
So the actual sort of length of the contract is supposed to at least cover sort of a couple phases of this. I'm hoping this phase one work product is fairly evergreen. Right? I mean, the idea of looking for sort of what are the guiding metrics that we should be looking at? What are appropriate levels of debt? How do we measure that? I'm hoping that those things like that will be slightly evergreen. The snapshot as far as the initial fiscal health is obviously going to get dated quickly. But at the same time, out of that should come, what are the metrics that are important to the city, right? That hopefully we can use sort of, as we go forward.
When they're comparing us to other municipalities, is that through the state, like nationally? Is this individual going to be looking at similar demographics, socioeconomic statuses? Like, can you help us understand what is the data that you're going to compare to other areas?
I don't know at this stage, right? I'll be honest. So what I would expect is that they will look at our revenue sources, right? And they will look at our reserves, right? And they'll look at our sort of base requirements, right? And then analyze the process that we're trying to do and sort of the overall, sort of creating an overall model of sort of, here's the intake, here's the outflow. And try to help us understand some metrics by which, your debt should be a certain percentage of what, right? Or you want to make sure that your debt service coverage ratio with regards to the revenue that you have coming in is a sort of an appropriate level, right? I don't necessarily expect that at this particular stage, it's going to go much beyond just the pure economic. I don't think there's going to be a lot of, at this stage, I don't think there's a discussion of sort of any socioeconomic considerations. I really think it's going to be purely financial at this point.
Why now, Chris? Like some part of my brain is nervous, like, oh man, the CFO is talking about borrowing money. Like,
yeah. Well, all right. So there's two aspects of it, right? I think one of them is I want to better understand, right, how to financially manage a municipality, right? So, I mean, part of it is my background from a corporate finance perspective, right? And so, I want to understand what are the unique aspects of municipal finance that I need to pay attention to, right? So part of this is my education as well. The other part is the pipeline of capital projects that we have and the pipeline of projects that the city council would like to pursue outside of just the general capital improvements is going to outpace our existing resources, right? And so this will help us understand what are the available resources, and then that helps city council make some decisions as far as how do you want to prioritize things. It will also help us really understand, do we have to be a little bit less ambitious about some of the capital projects that we have slated, or do we just have to prioritize different? As I mentioned, our budget for this year does include some sort of outside financing. And so it's from my perspective, I would like to be a little more diligent about that and more deliberate about it, as opposed to just sort of assuming we're going to finance that with traditional bank debt or some other resources.
Great, thank you. I think during my tenure in municipal leadership here, our city has been over its skis at times, and I'm somewhat traumatized by that. And so it's really important that we're not falling on our face, but also if we're a better skier now, we can be more nuanced and sophisticated in our financing and not be just scared of doing it the super triple conservative way and really missing opportunities. Others for Chris? Megan? No.
Just a comment. I appreciate you starting this work so that we can have more smart, specific, measurable and realistic goals. So thank you.
Thank you.
Great. So where we're shooting on this is a motion, I believe. I would.
Yeah, so there is a motion in the packet.
I move that we authorize the city manager to sign a municipal advisory services agreement to provide general financial analysis services as described in section 1A of the contract with, and to not exceed $20,000 to engage D.A. Davidson as municipal advisor to the city of Hood River.
Moved by Gladys,
I'll second.
second by Megan. Discussion.
This is dumb, but having just heard that motion, we're only looking at 1A of the scope of work in the packet.
At this
Ah, Okay, I missed that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion passes. Next, C. Longanetti again.
Megan, I just add the remainder of the scope of the contract is really just give every idea as far as what this entire project would entail for its lifespan. So
Thank you. SDC analysis.
yes, so again, also in the council work plan is the study of the SDC rates for the city. So utility rates and the SDC rates are both set by city council resolution. The current utility rate study, which I believe was completed in 2021, sets the basis for the water, sewer, stormwater rates that are in the fee schedule that are sort of updated every year. So FCS completed that as part of a study that was also supposed to include an analysis of the SDC rates. That was never completed by FCS and that contract had expired. And so what is before you is picking up that study. So the original contract was in 2019, completed in 2021. This picks up that work in order to comply with a priority that was identified again in the 2023-2024 council work plan. We've completed a revised scope that is attached as an exhibit to the contract, which would provide for a complete analysis of defensible improvement fees for water, wastewater, stormwater, and transportation system development charges. There is a definite need for this analysis, as most of these fees have not been looked at or revised in some time. So stormwater SDCs were established in 2007. Transportation SDCs were last revised in 2013. And then water and sewer system development charges were most recently adjusted in 2015. So except as originally established or amended by these these timeframes, each of these fees have only increased by CPI as part of the annual fee schedule adoption. So this proposed scope of work provides for the analysis for water, wastewater, stormwater, and transportation SDCs using data from the city on existing assets, planned projects, projected growth, and using those to develop a fee schedule. Deliverables from FCS will include a draft report documenting findings and recommendation, a review with staff of analytical results, and then up to 3 on-site presentations to City Council that would then be used to provide a final report that can then be implemented by the City of Hood River to redefine these fees. Again, this project is also expected to take somewhere around 6 to 9 months.
Questions? Doug?
Thank you, Mayor. Just wondering why the SDC portion of the study was never completed.
I'm not sure. I think it was a combination of either budget or time. Yeah.
And I think pandemic. I think there were other priorities more pressing.
Okay. Thank you.
Megan?
Thanks, Chris, again.
Yeah.
When this last was up, however many years ago, we had discussed, and I don't even remember if it was in the contract or not, but like looking at SDCs through the lens of promoting, certain housing types we want, whether it's more dense and near existing utilities or smaller or anything like that. Does this current contract look at that, or is there a way to add that kind of thing in?
So my understanding, this is something actually that Will had looked at prior. And reviewing some of the reports that Will had provided, right? There are some considerations that need to be addressed just from a statutory standpoint. I think there needs to be sort of a unified or sort of premise by which the fees are created, right? So I don't think you can sort of make certain developments more expensive by virtue of their size, right, or style, and certain developments less expensive by virtue of their size. So we will absolutely look with FCS to understand what can be done to encourage certain housing types, but I do think there are certain legal limitations.
I mean, yeah, because obviously the whole point of this is it's legally defensible. It would just, and I'm going to butcher this if I don't understand it right, but right now it's like if you're doing a 3/4 inch water line, it's the same cost if you were right next to an existing house or if you were a half mile away from the existing line, correct? Like, so you
Yes,
could,
to the extent the SDC charges are based on the water line size. That is correct.
okay, like, so there are things that you could vary based on some metrics that are defensible for cost of the utility upgrade,
Yeah, I don't know
Okay.
yes.
but we'll be looking into some of that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, and I guess along that exact same line is my understanding is that we can set policy to award SDC, discounts, I guess is the.
Separately, yes.
Huh?
Separate from this study.
Separate, so this sets here's how much we can set SDCs. And then there's a policy to say, this is what we will set SDCs. And then a range of policies to say for different things we can bounce around in there. So I just saying all that, is just to make sure that there's nothing in this effort that would either should be answered to allow us to do that, or this gymnastics adds anything else to that list. I'm sure it's okay, but.
I remember so many discussions where we were feeling frustrated that we could not accomplish our goals using the tool of cheaper SDCs. So I'm eager for us to all have that robust discussion and learn what we can and can't do. It always seemed like, yeah, we can't do the thing we want because I can't remember why. So it's such a tool if we could use it. If it's in the room, please come up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to echo that, setting the rates is different from deciding how you're going to subsidize the rates. And that will certainly, that is on the affordable housing plan. It's one of the next steps is to set SDC credits and waiver program. And also that's going to be part of the 5-year action plan that we do for the West Side Urban Renewal District is decide once Chris's project decides what the defensible rates are, we'll decide with these other funds of money, how do we want to pay credits so that the utility funds are still made whole. All the money for sewer expansion projects are still paid for. But urban renewal will then, at least for the West Side, pay down on behalf of the developers for preferred development types. Yeah.
Super,
Yeah,
thank you.
so the nuance there, just to, because I think this is what Dustin was going to jump up and say. You can't just forgive the SDCs.
Okay.
Right, and so they have to, so somebody has to pay for it, right? And so the concept being is that in order to incentivize affordable housing development or other types of sort of housing, it would be a subsidy, right? And so it's a subsidy on behalf of the city or another entity or a fund or whatever it is. But I don't believe you can just sort of you can't just forgive it.
Thank you, Chris. Dustin?
Yeah, in order for your system development to be legally defensible, you really need them. So the opportunity to waive them goes away. It really reduces your ability to say, if these are essential fees at this rate, how do you have the opportunity to forgive them? Now, the way that you scale them or implement them, to your question, on page 59, refinement of residential SDC shows up here in the scope. That is a way to help create a nuance to where possibly your scale and size of your utilities and the impact generated are set up to be maybe favorable to a smaller house. So therefore, you have a 3/4 inch service at 1,000 square foot house. It pays the same amount as a 3/4 inch service that serves a 10,000 square foot house. So the costing implications there vary to where a percentage. So there's opportunities to lawfully and defensively build in a methodology that helps create, we call it equity. It's not equality. Right now you have a system of equality. Everyone pays the same. If you want to adjust that for equity implications, there's some nuance to do that defensively. It's in your scope.
Thank you, guys.
Does that count that I both phoned a friend and called my
I
laptop?
love this.
If you got the resource flex. Okay, so we're still at the questions for Chris phase here. If not, I would entertain a motion.
I move that we authorize the city manager to sign a professional services contract totaling $59,870 with FCS Group to provide an analysis to the city of Hood River for water, wastewater, stormwater, and transportation system development charges.
Moved by Megan,
I'll second.
second by Gladys. Discussion. All in favor?
Yes.
All opposed? Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you, Chris.
Okay, thank you very much.
Again, to pie with the mayor, these questions about SDCs and development and the Heights urban renewal, and I mean, it's just people are really interested in it, and I'm eager to help folks understand somewhat the mechanisms so that they can tell us how they feel. City recorder.
Your Honor, I'd like to entertain a motion for the second and final reading of ordinance 2079 by title only.
Just, you said 2079, my paper said 77.
Oh, 2077, you're correct.
Great, okay, good. Yes, motion please.
So moved.
Moved by Zan Miller,
Second.
second by Coonahan, I believe.
Yep.
Jen.
Roll call, Counselor Coonahan,
Aye.
Counselor Zan Miller,
Yes.
Counselor Rivera,
Aye.
Counselor Stupina,
Yes.
Counselor Saunders,
Yes.
Your Honor.
Aye.
Ordinance 2077, an ordinance repealing and replacing in its entirety Title 15, Buildings and Construction, Chapter 15.40, Fire Prevention Code, Section 15.40.010, adoption of the Oregon Fire Code of the Hood River Hood River Municipal Code to authorize the Oregon State Fire Marshal to assist and coordinate with the city's fire chief and fire department and declaring an emergency.
Ordinance 2077 has had its second reading by title only and will become law in 30 days.
It actually becomes law immediately.
It will become law automatically right now.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. City manager comments.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I have a number of updates for you. First, I think I'll call on our planning director, Dustin Nielsen, give us a short-term rental update. We have a big anniversary date, big milestone coming this week.
Thank you, Mayor. As of October 13th, we will be into the 7th year of effective date of short-term rental regulations. During the license issuance of 2023, we had a number of licenses, approximately 60 that were issued up until October 13th. That is the end of the amortization period, to where those pre-existing yet non-conforming uses, particularly around home ownership or primary residency, were in effect. So we'll see approximately 60 or so licenses currently in existence fall off at that date. And then at that time also, it's the end of the 90 or the pre-existing in excess of 90 days restriction, allowing pre-existing users to rent out their primary residence more than 90 days. That's going to end October 13th as well. So all the affected license holders have been notified by mail a number of times. However, that is this Friday the 13th. So we will. It's a significant day for the program, and Will is also here now from kind of the onset. So it's really kind of the end of the implementation period. So now the program in its kind of new form will continue on in its regular issuance with very little in the way of exception to the standardized licensing criteria. So
It occurs to me that now enters the sort of realm, the same realm as some other things, which is sort of like neighbor complaint mode, right? Where it's like, we don't go out and do a lot of things until the neighbor says, you know, the neighbor's weeds are. So if I keep, will we hear from neighbors, hey, there keeps being a new Suburban in the parking lot every week? Like, will we retain the contract with that Guardian technology company, and or have we imagined at all how the enforcement will happen?
we also track, unlike a complaint driven, we track through host compliance, online activity or any activity. So we know when something comes online that's not licensed, and we contact them. So this is not just a complaint driven program. We actively monitor who holds a license and who doesn't, who's advertising. We'll continue to do that. You paid for
On the platforms.
Yeah, all the platforms, platforms you've never heard of. Or
Okay.
I've never heard of, maybe you have, but I have not. But they're actively out there sweeping the internet for advertisings and notices.
Now, it occurs to me that I don't think we have any tool for, I've been Airbnb-ing for 10 years and I've got this roster of folks who love it. And they email me and say, hey, we're coming back in February for 2 weeks. And I say, great. I mean, we're not guarding that because we can't guard that. Do you see what I'm saying?
If complaints come in, that would be an issue where if there's reason for us to understand that there is, some evidence or an issue that there's non-compliance, that this is a short-term rental that is being operated without the benefit of license as required by the municipal code, that could be an instance where it would be brought to our attention.
Great, thanks. Other questions on this topic?
Great, thank you, Dustin.
Thank you.
Then I just have 3 dates to share with you. The first is this Thursday, the 12th, MCAC is having a grand opening of the annex. This is 11 a.m. And this is the first part of it is for homeless individuals, but then the other part is the first shelter for families in our region. So this is a really big deal. MCAC has done a fantastic job. Other dates, the sister cities, Saruda, Japan, officials are coming. They'll be at the high school on Tuesday, October 17th at 8:45 a.m. I know Councilor Rivera is attending. Is anyone else planning to make it? Councilor Zandmiller, you and I have coffee that morning. If you want to, we could pop there.
Did an invite get sent out or what's the information on that?
I'm not sure it did. I think
I think Kevin presented at the last meeting. Oh, yes. Somebody was in Italy. I can send you some details, Counselor. Great, thank you.
Paul and I both were able to, or honored to go to Saruda as part of trips and so depending how. So if they bring a crowd, I think we can bring a crowd, and this is not to get in the way of Gladys being the welcoming committee council.
Great.
The more the merrier.
Oh, I thought you meant bring a crowd to Saruda. You mean bring a crowd to the high school on the 17th?
Yeah.
Oh.
We should just do both.
You know, with the pandemic, sister city visits and official actions really got suspended. And I think the sister city committees are getting back up to speed. And we hope to have news of, you know, student exchanges and official visits between the two cities sometime in the future. Great. So if you'll just let me know if you're interested, or Kevin Liberty can give you all those details as well. And then finally, the MCED Symposium is Friday, November 3rd. I think Councilor Zandmiller is planning to attend. I'm planning to attend. I think Will is trying. I think it's a really fantastic event. And if you'd like to attend, please let Jen know so she can get you registered soon.
Remind me the time and the location.
I believe it's 8 to noon. It's all morning.
We're in Cascade Locks.
Yes, the Cascade Lock.
The bridge is closed that day, just saying.
Oh, the Hood River Bridge.
That's kind of good news.
Right. Thank you. Those are my updates.
Committee reports. Tim,
None for me, Mayor.
Doug,
None.
Megan,
Nothing.
Mark,
None.
Gladys.
MCAC is opening their annex on Thursday.
Just kidding. That's so exciting. Such great progress forward.
If I can jump in for Councilor Polson, who is not here, committee reports, he serves as your representative, or one of the county appointed representatives to the Bridge Authority. He is at the Bridge Byways and Tolling Association Conference in Seattle right now. So I'm sure he'll full report for you.
This isn't quite a committee, but almost. Abigail and I and Gladys attended the United Way Gala. I just would like to point out, I really appreciate Abigail taking the time and buying her own ticket. Let that be clear. Because that 27 nonprofit organizations in our community that are doing a lot, including the keynote was from Beatrice Lynch, who's the head of Safe Space Children's Advocacy Center, which coordinates with our police department to provide a safe space for kids who are victims of violence to testify in a much more humane and effective way. So this was a great event that raised a bunch of money and had a bunch of fun. And it's a great part of, as I said on stage at that event, it's a great important pillar of our community. So mayor comments. So Saturday night was United Way. Sunday was Pie with the Mayor. You guys have seen the photos. It was so fun. We had a great conversation. There was enough people there that when somebody was like, oh, I can't believe this is happening, the other person who also was there said, well, except in my opinion, it's so they could like talk amongst each other. It was like super, super positive. And the peach pie was good. And one guy was like, when's the next one? Because I want to bring peach homemade ice cream. And so it was fun. It was a great outreach thing. And I sent you photos and kind of a report. I would encourage you to read what I wrote. I tried to sort of capture and distill the input of residents who took the time to come, and some of them disagree with the decisions we've made. And, you know, I went to the Armory and I gave input, and how come this didn't happen as well? Because other people voted against it. Like, okay, you vote, you lose sometimes. But it was a good session. And thanks to 10 Speed Coffee for hosting. And then yesterday, Mark and Chair of the County Commission, Ewer, and I hosted 10 Indians for lunch. And that was really fun at Three Rivers Grill. Thanks for hosting. They did such a nice job. And we had a robust discussion. And I mean, honestly, it got into some advocacy and lobbying. And there are absolutely things that the folks from CritFic and the Yakama Nation would like us to do. And I'm not sure we're going to be able to, but I'm excited to have that conversation be opened and talk about those issues. I think what I'd like to do going forward is to invite perhaps some of those advocates to come share with us kind of where it looks from their perspective. For example, we take water out of the Hood River to run our city, which is a very important use, and cold water entering the Columbia to help the salmon survive is a very important use. So these are legit policy questions that affect our neighbors who have gotten the short end of the policy questions for a bunch of centuries. So I'm excited for us to be good neighbors and friends, and they now all have my card and received gifts, and hope they feel like they have a friend and an ear in Hood River. Mark, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, it was very friendly. It was very positive. I think that there's some communication connections that we can make that I'll pass along the contact of their communications person and for the city and both the intertribal fisheries and Yakama Nation. It was the folks that were there. But it was very positive. I was happy I could go.
Okay, so that's mayor comments. Now council comments. Gladys.
No, nothing for me other than I appreciate you both attending and having those conversations. It's really important that we start establishing trust, and we may not be addressing all issues or have the ability to address all issues, but I appreciate you taking the time to just listen and figure out ways that we can collaborate and be good neighbors.
Thanks. Mark.
Yeah, the First Nations Day lunch was very nice. Thanks, Paul, for setting that up and letting me come. That was good. I thought it was positive. One Community Health had a festival, and I was able to walk around, and it was really neat too. It was also endearing, and I had my horchata, and I was a happy boy. So, and then I went from there and walked the little piece of Indian Creek Trail that I hadn't walked on before, which goes almost to Elliott Drive. So that was good. That's community effort right there. And then eventually that led to volunteering at Hops Fest, which was a hoot. And seeing local bands playing and a mix of locals and tourists in at least by the hours I was there, it was very positive. So it was good. That's all I got.
Okay. Go ahead, Gladys.
Thank you. Apologies. I attended the Macaque fundraiser this last Thursday. I know I saw a city manager there, and I would love to have Kenny come back and just report out all of the programs and all of the successes that have taken place. I'm certain that you all saw a story in the newspaper about one of the local residents there, and the significant impact to just have a safe place in order for him to now be permanently housed. Macaque is an incredible organization doing really good work, and I would love for Kenny to come back and just present out all of the work that has taken place since the
So
last
let me
time.
just shortcut here. Can I get a nod or a thumbs up? Is it the council's pleasure that we invite Kenny to come report to us? Yes, great. Thanks, Gladys. Megan,
I've been out of town, so I've done nothing, but it's really nice to be back.
did you go to Europe or something?
I did.
That's awesome. Congrats. Doug.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Apologize for not being there in person today, but I've got a cold and I didn't want to pass it along to anybody in person.
you.
So thank you for letting me join remotely. Also would like to acknowledge the milestone of the amortization period coming to an end. I want to thank everybody that was involved in that debate back in 7 years ago. I think the city council at that time, and members of city council conducted themselves in a manner that really got me interested in becoming more involved in city politics. So huge kudos to them for setting a great example for everybody in the city. that on that same note, I just want to shout out to the Civics Academy that's taking place. That I heard has sold out. So tremendously happy to hear that citizens want to engage with the city and learn about what the city's all about. I think that's really encouraging. I'm excited to see what the output of that's going to be. And yeah, just wanted to also extend my congratulations to MCAC on the opening of the annex on the 12th. Thanks.
Thanks, Doug. Tim?
Thanks, Mayor. I guess just briefly, I would thank you for the hosting the Indigenous Peoples Day celebration, and also throw in there that returning clean stormwater to our rivers and streams is something that intersects with tribal interests as well. In addition to that, well, I think Mayor, you, Mark and Grant, and I attended the Parks and Rec meeting, and which was interesting. But I must admit, sometimes I struggle in those situations because they went around and asked each one of us individually what we thought of the different options. And sometimes when I'm in that situation, I try to view myself as a city council representative. And so it's difficult to express your own opinions in that situation, because I always think, you know, what would the rest of the council want? And I just throwing that out there, that I know that we're allowed to express our own opinions. But I really do try to view things in those contexts with all the committees that I'm on.
Fair enough.
It'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on that, Mayor and Mark.
I share the sentiment. It's like, okay, are they asking me, what do I think the council would say? Or are they saying, yeah, right, exactly. Good. Thanks to the counselors who took the additional evening to participate in a very important broad community discussion. What we had 5 entities there. And I thought that the survey results were very valuable information for us. So anyway, yeah, thanks, Tim.
I agree. And they threw out options about how to finance various activities. One of it included a food and beverage tax, and other were bonds, various bond issues. So at some point in time, I think it would be good to get Mark to present those options in front of the whole council.
Okay, so this was a question that Abigail and I were discussing, that, okay, so a quorum of us attended that multi-agency meeting.
Yep.
To hear the survey results. Would we, the council, also wish to spend our time to get our own private showing? Can I get a show of hands on who would like to have that on the agenda?
I'm hip to it.
Megan, did you understand?
Yeah, I guess, and I missed the meeting, so sorry, but it's like the survey results, I think we were already sent, so I'm not sure we need presented, but if it's a larger, have a conversation where Tim can answer just for Tim and not for all of council, I could see that being valuable.
Mayor, can I make a comment?
Please, Abigail.
I met with Mark Hickok this morning. We talked about that meeting and kind of next steps. His board will meet next Wednesday and talk about what, based on what they heard from all of you, what they think the next steps might be. And so I think it'd be appropriate for Mark to come maybe late November, early December to review what his board's direction is probably likely to be. In addition to, if they are interested in the pool, we have talked, they've talked publicly, we have not talked publicly about the idea of swapping Collins Field for the pool. And Mark would like to bring that piece to you for a full public conversation as well. So sounds good if we can have a little bit of a refresh of the meeting that happened last week, but really moving forward on some other next steps as well.
So Abigail, am I correct in thinking that Mark, since we had a quorum, that Mark inferred or individual opinions as a council decision?
I don't think so. I think they were really looking for temperature taking, and ultimately it was just a where do individuals and where does this group, this whole group, right? I don't think they were looking at people as individual counselors or what party they were representing, but what is this group of elected officials all, what's their comfort level with this? And now their board will go back, review all of that information along with all the other information they've collected, right? They had the survey that was presented, but they also had a non-statistical survey. They also have been having conversations with stakeholders, taking all of those things as they think about their next steps.
Yeah, and I want to make it clear that it was a great discussion. I appreciated getting the information,
Great,
but sometimes I just feel a little conflicted.
for sure. And for those of you who did not attend, I have the link to the Zoom meeting. It was, it's not on YouTube, but if you would like that, I can provide that to you. I'll send it out to the whole group.
And Tim, to your point, like a lot of what they were asking us, I think was, should we do a local option or a food and beverage tax? And
Yeah.
that's not a question about Collins Field or do we support the
Correct.
pool or is $40 million the right number? That was some temperature taking, and that doesn't commit us or to anything.
Yeah, I understand, but still, it's an odd question to ask if you ask me.
Okay, so Abigail just kind of laid out a Mark Hickok visit sort of around the 1st of December. Are folks interested in that?
Yeah.
Good. So we'll move ahead with that. Thank you, Abigail. I think we're on Tim still. Council comments.
No, I'm good, thanks. Paul.
Great. I have two things that I forgot, so I'm circling back for a second bite. Our city manager's annual review is coming up next month. Luckily, we have a plan. So the ICMA, which is the International City Manager Association, did I say that right? You were just in Austin at the thing.
That's right.
So they have the 14 core areas critical for effective local government. So Abigail and I suggest that we evaluate her based on those 14 areas. So it sounds a little daunting, but one idea we had was to sort of divide and conquer, and that 7 counselors would perhaps each take 2 areas and kind of read through them and say, you know what, here's how I think we, the council, could evaluate Abigail on these 2 critical areas. That makes it seem a little bit less daunting. And obviously, we're not all each going to have a long opinion about every single one of these many bullet points, but it seems like if we ask ourselves these questions, that will cover the landscape and give, it will prompt us to give the meaningful input about the performance of our chief executive. So I would suggest that we divide and conquer the 14 core areas in preparation for the next step at our next meeting. Megan, go ahead.
And I may be mixing this up, but if I'm remembering last year, we came up with like 4 or 5 specifics of the 14 areas to say, this is what we want you to focus on this year. Do we want some extra attention on those? Whatever, I can't remember what any of them were, but on those specific ones that we highlighted as,
Yeah, I can certainly send you the information from last year if that would be
It's
helpful.
that Excel spreadsheet, right? I can see it, Office 365. What's the status of that one? Is that?
The spreadsheet was, so sorry to dominate here, but the 6-month review was a review of the council projects and the status of each of those. That was the Excel spreadsheet, and we can certainly do that if that would be helpful to you. And then the other piece was, I think we had chosen 3 or 4 of the places to.
this was the one Jessica and Kate had
That's
put
right.
together. And we were like, yeah, the general review and then, oh yeah, looking forward, here's where we want you to prioritize limited energy.
My understanding is that last year, because she had only been here a short time, 6 months, that rather than focusing on 14, there were just 3 or 4 that were used to evaluate her. I'm encouraging us to broaden that, and we certainly could say that critical area number 11, for example, is, that's not really what we do here in Hood River, but to consider all those different angles and viewpoints from which to evaluate her performance and compile, because it's really about gathering and compiling, right?
Do you want to just assign us ones?
Yes.
And then give us a deadline.
So great. So far, so good. So we've got the 14. We're each going to have our pet 2 to take home and work with. Our our next meeting, you know, in 2 weeks, how November is the sort of the time. And so we're in good time. We're in timely now, as long as we don't let it get away from us. So what would be the deliverable or the expectation in 2 weeks counselors would have? Help me think this through, you guys. Including you, Abigail.
Yeah, well, I think traditionally what happens is you have a public conversation about the process. That's what you're doing right now. Then you have an executive session without your city manager to review and determine, you know, where you think things fall. And then you have a, you know, at a later date, you have an executive session with me in which you deliver your performance review to me. Or I have the option of asking for it to be in public, but generally it's executive session.
So public, private, public.
Yeah, so you'd have one meeting without me to talk about me, and then another meeting with me to let me know how I'm doing.
So we need to talk about what are the questions, and then we can do the.
That's right.
Without you,
Yeah.
and then with.
Yes, and there's a couple of steps before we do the executive session. For example, if we all show up in 2 weeks and say, oh, I haven't thought about Mark's 2 or Gladys's 2, I only thought about my 2. Well, then that's not what that session looks like. We need to. And is each counselor only evaluating our city manager on 2? Or are we each the sort of shepherd of the 2 and we want input on all 14? So I'm thinking.
Well, it's hard for me to know what's on that list because I just haven't seen it. So, I mean, I know what we did last year was based it off of our city goals and where the status is and how far those projects have been moved along. That's how we were measuring her levels of success. I haven't seen that.
Right, and that's a different way to stick to the goals. Here's the goals we agreed. This is her assignment.
Right.
How's she doing?
I think it's just, it's important for us to be clear on what are those KPIs that we're tracking for her? How are we measuring success?
Yeah.
And is it based off of our city
And for the rest of
key
the
performance indicators?
So we're just talking online people, you hear some input.
So, I mean, maybe we have to come back in the next meeting and actually kind of have the discussion. I think we were planning to have tonight, but can we see
Last year's.
because I think there was the 14 things, so we can review what that looks like. I think it was, maybe it was the 6-month one where we did the project stuff, but so we all have the same basis of what we're even talking about of like, do we want to review her on the 14?
So say specifically what you're suggesting, please, Megan.
Abigail, can you send what we did last year? So that we know.
You're asking for the results for eval from last year.
No,
I mean, I would like to see the material we use to do the evaluation, but I do think part of last year's evaluation was, okay, for the coming year, please focus on these 3 or 4
That's right.
things. And so that seems like a question we should be asking is, how did she do on those?
that we should follow up.
And how do those 3 or 4 overlap or not with the council goals from goal setting?
I think they were part of the 14 things, but again, this is a year ago,
That's
and I
right.
don't 100% remember.
So we should at least have all of the data from last year and then be prepared to have a conversation at our next meeting of what are the next steps and how do we go based off, do we continue to use the tool that we did last year? Or do we implement something else?
And then,
I agree.
and then with the review of the 2, we can say these are, the 2 of us think that these 2 are very important, or they're not important at all, and they shouldn't be part of the next thing, right?
Great.
Like that.
Okay, Abigail and I will draft a
Sounds great.
assignment for you guys. And then there will be some homework. There will be some homework before, if you show up having not thought through the assignment, it's going to retard the progress, okay? On your permit.
Thank you, Mayor. So I think the direction I'm hearing is I will send you last year's information, the ICMA information, which I think we also had last year. And then at the council meeting 2 weeks from now, we'll try to fine tune what the process is going to look like.
Yes.
And then we'll have executive sessions in November, December. Perfect.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
Good. Thanks for that discussion. Yeah. Glenn.
I have another question that is kind of off topic, but similar topic. For strategic planning this year, are we gonna do that in December again, like the 1st of December? Because I guess if we're going to be evaluating her on closing out some goals, then that can help us understand what are the new goals that we're gonna be prioritizing for the next year.
Thank you, Counselor. Been thinking about a retreat. You have a 2-year work plan. So I don't feel as much urgency. So I've been looking, as well as I know Counselor Stupina is going to be gone for much of December. He's got big travel plans. So looking at probably a January retreat, which I think you've done a number of times. But looking at not necessarily blowing up starting from scratch from a work plan. I think definitely a check-in on where we are on the work plan. And then have been thinking about, are there some topics where we could maybe take a deep dive? But I definitely want to hear from all of you if you have thoughts on what you'd like to see in an annual retreat. Because we can do it a little bit differently this time if you'd like. And if you have good facilitators to suggest.
And one of the deep dive topics that Abigail and I have discussed, and I don't know that we've decided, but we discussed is annexation, the pluses and minuses.
For sure.
Discuss, right? I mean, there are a lot of issues, and there are some local experts on what those issues might be. I would really like to feel that I and we have sort of a broad exposure to not having opinions about the right thing to do, but that's the plus minus of this policy. Oh, that's something to keep in mind. I want to get all those issues up so that we can decide from a very informed basis. So that was an idea we had for the deep dive. That's all. So
Thank you all.
what's a next step on planning the agenda? Should we get a date? Should we?
Yeah, I'll talk to the city recorder. We can maybe start looking at what some possible dates might be. And then I've been trying to find someone who might be an annexation expert who's not on our staff or not already attached to this from a county or a city perspective. So looking for an annexation expert.
Seems like PSU or.
Yeah, I've reached out to PSU Center for Public Service. Talked to them a couple times about it. They thought they had some folks, but I haven't heard back yet.
Okay, so that was my extra mayor comment. I think that brings us to the end of that. We don't have an executive session, or yes, we do. Okay, so is there anything else for the good of the order? We are adjourned.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. You can't see us. Bye-bye.